Hello there, AP Environmental Science class. Welcome back to part two of my lecture on chapter one, the environment and sustainability. We left off with part one, and we were talking about the population increase on planet Earth and how that population increase is one of the main reasons why we're dealing with all the environmental problems that we have. So we're now going to talk about something called affluence and the unsustainable resource use. If you remember from part one, we were talking about how the more developed countries, while having the least amount of population, use the most amount of resources as compared to the developing countries. So affluence results in increased resource consumption per person. But this, of course, increases environmental degradation, waste, and pollution. So affluence is basically affluent, meaning that you have some money, you have some technology, but again, that it results in increased resource consumption. Positive aspects of affluence, however, mean better and more widespread education. So this could increase the awareness of environmental issues, like this class we're taking right now together, or I'm teaching and you're taking it together with your colleagues, and money available to develop technologies that will have beneficial environmental impact. So those are some of the positive aspects of affluence. But again, we need to use those positive aspects a little bit more in our well-developed countries, like here in the United States, to hopefully get these issues out there to the general public. Poverty has harmful environmental and health effects. We spoke about this a little bit in part one. We talked about how poverty does bring about some environmental and adverse health effects. So people who lack money, they lack that money to fulfill basic needs: adequate food, water, shelter, healthcare, and education. As a result, to them, short-term survival much more important than environmental concerns, obviously, right? If you don't know where your next meal is going to come, you really don't care if you're polluting the environment, right? You need to survive. That's our number one instinct. And so if you don't have that, if you don't have fresh water, if you don't have shelter, you care about that much more than you care about environmental issues. And obviously that makes some sense, right? Put yourself in their shoes. I think that would be, you would kind of feel the same way. Malnutrition, lack of clean drinking water, a big issue around the world. We're going to do a whole chapter on this coming up in a couple of chapters. But this causes premature death for 7 million children under the age of 5 each year. So again, things that we have to kind of deal with here. It's tough to look at. Being a parent myself, this is a tough picture to see, right? One of every 3 children younger than age 5 in less developed countries, such as this starving child in Bangladesh, suffers from severe malnutrition caused by lack of calories and lack of protein. So again, what we're going to learn about the green revolution, the second one, we thought we had figured out a way to feed everyone. And unfortunately, we're finding out that that revolution is actually hurting the environment more than we thought. And again, more on that when we talk about food production coming up in a couple of months. Ways to reduce poverty include or to reduce malnutrition and infectious diseases, to provide that primary school education. The more you educate someone, the better chance that they can get out of poverty. Reduce that population growth. Again, how? That's the ethical dilemma. We talked about it in the tragedy of the commons. In the article by Garrett Hardin, how do you reduce that population growth and make small, low-interest loans to poor people to help them kind of get out of that poverty cycle. So, how do we do that? Well, prices of goods and services rarely include their harmful environmental and health costs, right? This is that full cost pricing you're going to hear me talk about a lot as we go through the class this year. You'll notice also in this unit, we're kind of bouncing around a little bit. That's because this chapter is kind of an introductory chapter, so we are kind of bouncing around a bit. So, what does this mean? This means companies do not pay the environmental costs of resource use. Goods and services do not include the harmful environmental costs. And again, that's because of lack of information to the consumers. And also, companies receive tax breaks and subsidies. And some subsidies encourage the depletion of Earth's natural capital, right? So we have to look at that. And should we be giving oil companies? Should we be giving gas companies? Should we be giving mining companies these tax breaks and these subsidies? Again, these are some of those dilemmas that we talk about here in environmental science. Also, people increasingly isolated from nature, right? These are the reasons why environmental science is such an issue now, because not a lot of people hang out outdoors. So we're increasing population in urban areas, but that again is that lack of contact with nature. If you live in New York City and you don't really leave New York City, maybe you don't see the pollution to a river upstate, or maybe you don't see the pollution to the Atlantic Ocean down near the Carolinas, right? Because you're just living in your urban area. You don't see it. So what are the benefits of these outdoor activities, right? Not only does it give us that sense of connection with Mother Earth, but it's better health. It reduces stress. It improves your mental capabilities. It increases imagination and creativity. So when your parents say, go outside, right? I'm sure you've heard that a lot. Maybe not so much now that you're seniors and juniors, but when you were younger, I'm sure. Again, there are benefits from actually being outdoors. So hopefully, as you go on in life here, you'll take that into account and maybe spend a little more time out in Mother Nature there. So also talked about it in class. People have these different views on environmental problems and their solutions. So there are a couple of different views. There's something called the environmental worldview. This is the set of assumptions and values that you may have about interactions with the natural world. And again, we have this environmental ethics. So example, why should we care about the environment? Do we have an obligation to protect other species against extinction? Should every person be entitled to equal protection from environmental hazards, et cetera, et cetera? And again, these are some of the ethical questions that come up in environmental science, and some of those questions we will try to tackle as we go through the course. So there are three human-centered environmental worldviews out there. One is called the planetary management worldview. One is called the stewardship worldview, and one is called environmental wisdom. So this chart here, kind of important. I would definitely understand this chart, definitely understand the differences between the planetary management, stewardship, and the environmental wisdom views of the environment. So what's planetary management? That basically says that we as humans are apart from the rest of nature, and we can manage nature to meet our increasing needs and wants. Because of our brains, right, and technology, resources will not run out. The potential for economic growth is essentially unlimited, and our success will depend on how well we manage Earth's life support systems, mostly for our benefit. So that's the planetary management view, that basically we're running the show as humans. We'll figure out how to have finite resources with our technology, and therefore no worries. Okay. Stewardship is kind of in the middle of planetary management and environmental wisdom. Stewardship says we have an ethical responsibility to be caring managers of the earth. We will probably, though, not run out of resources, but we really shouldn't waste them. But we should encourage environmentally friendly forms of economic growth and discourage harmful forms for the environment. And our success will depend on how well we manage the Earth's life support systems for our benefit and for the benefit of the rest of nature. So again, stewardship, kind of a hybrid. We still feel that we're running the show, but we need to run the show in a more ethical way that helps the environment for future generations. The final one, environmental wisdom. This says that we humans are part and totally dependent on nature, that resources, they're limited, should not be wasted. We have to encourage earth-sustaining forms of economic growth, and our success depends on learning how nature sustains itself and then kind of integrating those lessons from nature into the ways we think and act. One example of this is with pesticides. Believe it or not, folks, we're learning that pesticides, not only are they harmful for the environment, but they don't really help, because evolution and natural selection causes animals, insects, to get to the point where the pesticide doesn't affect them, right? Through genetic variation, through mutations, through natural selection. However, when you have a natural predator like a bird that eats the insect, as the insect evolved, the bird evolves as well to stay with the insect because it needs the insect. And so it's actually the natural, there's another ecosystem service, the bird killing that or eating that insect is a natural form of pesticide, and believe it or not, that works better than actual pesticides. So again, we're learning that we are nature does a lot of the stuff that we're trying to do, and we should really try to emulate nature. That's the environmental wisdom worldview. All right, so again, just understand the three of these, the basic difference between planetary management, stewardship, and environmental wisdom. All right, so at this point, we're going to revisit the tragedy of the commons a bit because now we can talk about it a little more, right? So increasing human population and affluence increases the demand for more fish, ultimately depleting the fish source, right? The fish resource. Isolation from nature results in a lack of understanding how these systems support one another and how they support our economy. Cooperative allotment and enforcement systems control fish caches and ensure that harvests are kept at sustainable levels, right? So more people, we can't deplete the fish resource, so we've come up with some cooperative ways to kind of keep those fisheries intact so that we can keep the fish at a sustainable level. So again, kind of what we're talking about with the tragedy of the commons. So what is the role of economics in all of this? Well, our economic systems depend on that natural capital we talked about in part one of this lecture. Economics is the social science that deals with the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. So again, natural capital, there's human capital, and there's manufactured capital. That all kind of goes into economies. A low throughput system uses nature as a model for a more sustainable economy, and that's what we have to try to get to, this low throughput system that, again, uses nature as a model. All right, so what does that mean? Well, you'll notice inputs from the environment, right? We have high quality energy and matter, all right, that then go through some energy conservation, waste and pollution prevention to a system throughput here, which is to a low waste economy that gives out some low quality energy heat or some pollution control that then we can recycle and reuse. All right. So again, these are the outputs, and they're all are dependent on that natural capital. So in a free market society, economic decisions are governed by the interaction of supply and demand. So, right, let's take a look at oil here, right? As the demand for oil goes up, the price for oil, right, continues to go up as well, right? So we have high quantity here, and the price actually goes down, right? So that's so let me correct myself there. As the quantity of a material goes up, the price for that material actually goes down, right? Because the more you have of it, the more that's lying around, the less cost it is. If the quantity is rather rare, we don't have a lot of it, well, then obviously the price goes up. So the point is to try to find that market equilibrium where the amount and the price are kind of equal, and that could help us stay more sustainable. The problem is we want low price, right? So we put more of a product in the marketplace, or we get more of the product, and that unfortunately deals with a depletion of our resources. Again, this is that full cost pricing. We want stuff cheap, but unfortunately that cheap price is not taking into account what you actually need. So again, as supply increases, your price decreases because you have so much of that supply around. So the idea is to kind of find that happy medium here where you have enough supply while the price is kind of right there, if everything's kind of equal, and that's a way that we could potentially keep our resources sustainable and also still have economies that are flourishing. So we're using economic tools to deal with environmental problems. Again, here's that full cost pricing you're going to hear me talk about all the time. That's the inclusion of health and environmental costs in the price of products. So like I said, if we took in the full cost pricing of gas would be about $14 per gallon here in the United States. Subsidies are those tax breaks given to a company in order to make them more competitive. Again, this can help provide jobs, but it also can encourage that environmental degradation we talked about. So this is kind of the yin and the yang, right? You give a mining company tax subsidies, they make more money so they can hire more people, which is good for the economy. But because they're hiring more people, they're pulling more gold or silver or whatever out of the ground, mining more stuff, and that not only depletes the resources, but causes the environment to degrade as well. So again, here are the issues that we have to tackle here in environmental science. And obviously taxes can encourage sustainability by taxing pollution. but also lowering taxes on labor, income, and wealth. So we want to raise the taxes on pollution, but kind of lower the taxes for everyone else. Again, here's the politics that comes into it. Never as easy as it sounds. So what is the role of politics and government in all of this? Well, environmental policy, laws, regulations, programs that are designed, implemented, and enforced by one or more agencies can help. Some of those agencies are the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, Department of Energy, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the National Marine Fisheries Service, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA. These are some of the environmental agencies we have in the U.S. That help regulate environmental policy and help enforce that policy. So implementing laws that reduce pollution, save wild species from extinction, and create jobs and new technologies. That's what the role of the 21st century government should be doing when it comes to environmental science. Both military security and economic security are preserved when environmental security is protected. So again, if you protect the environment, you protect the military and the economy. Here's one of those win-win situations, right, that we speak about. United Nations works to protect human health, the environment, reduce poverty, and provide infrastructure internationally. All right, so that's the organization that helps internationally. So what we need to do is form an environmentally sustainable society. What does that look like? Well, it's one that protects natural capital and living on its income. Living sustainably means living on the natural capital that provides plants, animals, soil, clean air, and clean water. To live more sustainably, what can we do? Learn from nature, protect natural capital, stop wasting resources, recycle and reuse, incorporate that full cost pricing, and accept the responsibility of working together. And I'll add another one in here. Finish taking this course for the rest of the year, because that's what we're going to talk about for the next couple of months. How can we live more sustainably? How can we protect Mother Earth for future generations? All right, so that concludes part 2 of my lecture on chapter 1, the environment and sustainability. And as always, thanks for listening.